We go. Welcome to the How to Health podcast. I'm Dr. Lori Marbus, and today I'm so honored to have Dr. Renee Dufault. And how are you doing today, Dr. Renee?
I'm great, Dr. Lori.
But you're in beautiful Hawaii, and you wrote a book I came across. It's called Unsafe at Any Meal, and I would really encourage any of the listeners who really care about their health that you really should pay attention to what this conversation today, because it's going to be very important that you understand what's in our food, the ingredients, how we prepare our food, and but I'm going to let Dr. Dufault explain all that. But let's talk a little bit about her and why she is an expert and why you should listen. She earned her BS degree in Environmental Policy Analysis and Planning at the University of California, Davis, and got her doctorate in health education. By the way, she is a vet, so thank you for your service. She served in the Army and the Navy with the Marines. Mm-hmm. And so she also worked as an environmental health officer for the National Institutes of Health, the EPA, and the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. And then due to circumstances, she became an FDA whistleblower. And that is what we're going to talk about. So in 2010, she founded the Food Ingredient and Health Research Institute. You can find that at foodingredients.info. And then she's, with her book, she's had amazing reviews. You guys, you can see it. Sorry about the glare. Just really incredible. But we're going to first just get to learn a little bit about you, Dr. Fo, if you don't mind. Just tell us, how did you become interested in what you do at the laboratory and food and just, it's such a unique place. Not a lot of people know people who do what you've done. So how did that all start?
Well, when I was at the FDA, my job was to decommission laboratories that the government had used for years. And FDA had a number of laboratories. I had done the same thing for EPA. So my job was primarily doing cleanup work, cleaning up contaminated properties. And we kept finding mercury in plumbing systems, and we wondered how it got there. And so then, back in the olden days, researchers just put everything down the drain because that's what they did. It was before we had regulations for hazardous waste disposal, proper disposal. And so we wondered where the mercury came from. Well, after doing some research, and there were other folks out there who had been exploring why mercury comes out of plumbing systems, and there was a study done from an organization called Masco up in Massachusetts, and they were associated with Harvard, and the hospitals in Boston were discharging effluent, meaning wastewater, with mercury. There was so much mercury in that wastewater they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So Masco had done an analysis of all these different chemicals used by hospitals, and they found mercury in many of them. And so they put up a database on their website explaining, the amounts of mercury in all these different chemicals. And so once the hospital stopped using specific products, then the mercury levels went down, and they were able to reduce their levels of inorganic mercury in effluent, which is wastewater discharge. So I was looking at these chemicals, and I thought, wow, some of these are used for in food processing, food manufacturing. So I was very interested in tracking the mercury cycle, where we mine it, and then where does it go from there? And I was preparing a PowerPoint presentation for a USGS conference and doing an investigation, and I found that mercury was found in chlorine chemicals, and that you make chlorine using mercury. And so then I found out, and I had colleagues at EPA that sort of pushed me in the right direction, and it turned out there was missing chlorine from these chlorine plants because they used so many tons of mercury every year, and it was missing. They couldn't figure out where it went. So some of it landed in their product. In fact, there was one chlorine manufacturing plant that had traced and tracked all their missing mercury. So they filed a report, and it was available to the public. So I got my hands on that. And then I thought, well, holy cow, these specific, any chemicals coming from this particular process is used in food and pharmaceutical manufacturing, there's a potential for trace amounts of mercury in those products that we either eat or take as medicine. And so this particular chemical company had a web page, which they're not around anymore, but under that name. And it said their largest consumer of their mercury grade caustic soda, which is sodium hydroxide, was the high fructose corn syrup, corn refining industry, and also certain food colors and other types of pharmaceutical industry. And so I thought, wow, I need to start investigating, is there any mercury in high fructose corn syrup? And I contacted, at that time, there was only one organic high fructose corn syrup maker in the country. They don't exist anymore. He got out of business, but he was very frank, and he said, yeah, we prefer the mercury grade caustic soda when we make our organic high fructose corn syrup because it enhances the product shelf life. What does that mean? Well, it means that, mercury has been used for hundreds of years to kill mold and bacteria because it's one of the most toxic elements in the periodic table. Okay, so I thought, wow, this is serious, because exposure over time, if your body isn't able to excrete it, then you're going to have a buildup, and it could be a factor in all kinds of different diseases. So I asked an FDA field investigator, because I was at FDA headquarters under the commissioner's office, and I asked a field investigator to go out and collect samples of high fructose corn syrup from different corn refiners. And we, I had them sent to different places, because back in those days, to be able to actually detect inorganic mercury in anything type of media, it was still a challenge. So I sent them to different places, University of California, my alma mater, and, the NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, and Armed Forces Radiobiology Research Institute. We did some work there on them. And no matter who did the analysis, everybody found trace amounts of inorganic mercury. And so NIST actually wrote a report. And so University of California professors and myself, we presented our findings at a meeting I had asked for at the Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, which is the group that handles food ingredients at FDA. And we presented our findings, and they said that I had to stop investigating, and that it wasn't my job, and that they would look into it. Well, that nothing ever happened. There was no looking into it. Nothing ever came out. And so that's when I decided that I would have to retire early. So that, because I was under the Uniform Code of Military Justice as a public health service officer in uniform, and you have to obey orders or they will put you in jail. So I had to do everything legally, in order to blow the whistle. It had to be legal. And so I followed the rules. And when I retired, there were samples left over from the original batch that we got. I had permission to send them to a University of Wisconsin, and they analyzed that batch of samples. We knew what we'd find, but we analyzed them after 2008 when I retired, and then we published our report. And by then I had really done research on mercury metabolism, and created a model for how these levels would create opportunities for disease. And that paper, that was a different paper, and that was published in Behavioral and Brain Functions. And now people are following it, they're citing it. So all over the world, researchers are looking at the role of inorganic mercury in autism, Alzheimer's, neurological diseases.
Wow.
And so I don't really have to do anything else. One researcher called me from Australia, and he said, after he read that one article, and he said, you don't have to do anything else. Your contribution, So,
right.
So we have all these so-called research groups all over the US that are completely ignoring this problem. That now we know, because follow-up research, we've learned that the higher your inorganic blood mercury levels, the higher your glucose. So it's a factor in the development of diabetes. It's a factor in the development of heart disease. So, and of course, autism. And, so we know this, and researchers all over the world are verifying, that these exposures from food are a factor in the disease. Not to say that it causes disease, but it's a factor, because no single cause for any disease, because our bodies are so different. We're all genetically different, and it would just be a contributing factor. So that's just, that's how I got into it.
That is, it's an incredible story. So first of all, when someone tells you that at that meeting that you had called and you present these like amazing findings and you're thinking, I'm serving the public, I'm here to protect the public, that is what we're here to do. And they tell you basically to stop what you're doing, halt all proceedings. What was going through your mind? I'm like, how do you contain yourself? Because I know I would have had difficulty.
Well,
I'm impressed.
I was absolutely flabbergasted.
Wow.
Really. I mean, I was amazed. I couldn't believe it. It's like, I up until that time, I really didn't, I took them at their word that they would look into it, but I was flabbergasted. I thought it had to do with a turf war. I'm at the commissioner's office there at the food, Center for Food Safety. I thought it was a turf thing. And then when it was clear that nobody was going to follow up, and by then I had prepared a manuscript that explained why this exposure wasn't safe. And I had sent it all over FDA to pediatricians. FDA has its own, roster of physicians. And I got nothing but positive feedback. Glad you're doing this. It's great, blah, blah, blah. And then, we went to publish, and I was told I couldn't, I can't remember if they said we couldn't. Oh, yeah, that's right. They said you can't use these results. We were citing the National Institute of Standards and Technology report. It was a hard copy report. And they told me we couldn't use those results. So therefore we couldn't publish. That was another thing that happened. They didn't want, then I knew at that point that they really wanted to suppress the information. And then that to me, that was like, what can you say? What do you say to that? Because you're a public health service officer and your mission is public health. And then it really, I really needed to get my paperwork in to retire and, do all of that I retired early at a cost, financial cost, because, I lost 10 years worth of pension benefits and so on by retiring early. And I've never really gained, there's been no gain, no financial gain. It's been, it is what it is. But the purpose was to get the word out so that the public could be informed. And you know what? If other countries are carrying out the research and they're moving it forward, then I feel good about that, because the U.S. can continue to wallow in their disease and their strategies for treating disease as opposed to preventing it. Right. And they can just continue to become sicker and sicker. And if they don't want to listen, they don't want to listen. And the problem is the corporations are pretty much pulling the strings. They run the government, and if anybody tells you they don't, then they're not being honest. That's how it is.
Yeah, or they're completely ignorant.
Yeah.
So what do you think was the inhibiting factors? Like, why do you think they were so adamant? Was there certain types of industry that you feel were pulling that?
The corn refinery. When we came out with the article in Published Flour, the Chlorine Institute and the Corn Refiners Association, they both came out against against our findings.
Wow.
And, but Canadian scientists, we published in 2008, Canadian scientists working for the government of Canada went out and got products off their shelves containing corn syrup. 2 years later, fresh samples, our samples were 2005. They came out in 2010 after the corn refiners and the Chlorine Institute blasted our findings. And they found levels of inorganic mercury in products containing these ingredients. So, they didn't come out and blast Canada because, our country is so American-centric or U.S.-centric. They only,
Right.
Value what's done in the U.S. as opposed to what everybody else is doing.
Right.
So, it's still out there. It's still happening. There's still mercury cell chloralkali plants in North America. There's 4 of them. You don't hear about them anymore. Nobody's talking about them, but they're there. And they're still producing these mercury-grade chemicals. And I actually went to the Pharmacopoeia, which is the organization that is across the street from FDA, where I worked, and they are all the manufacturers of pharmaceuticals. They are members of Pharmacopoeia. And I went over there because these same chemicals are used in the manufacture of drugs. And I did a presentation for them while I was still at FDA. And they asked me to prepare a monograph for consideration for their annual meeting because they felt like, somebody there thought it was an important issue.
Right.
And then I kind of put it on the back burner and I didn't do it right away. And then the deadline came up and the guy from Pharmacopoeia contacted me and said, we need that monograph. So I prepared it. And then I never heard a word. So, there are people that work in the industries that we're talking about that do care, but they're just peons. They're not in charge of the big money and the profits. So, they use these compounds that prevent the growth of bacteria and mold on purpose, in purposeful ways. Like, for example, with flour, bleached flour. The chlorine used to bleach flour has an allowable amount of inorganic mercury. And so if you buy bleached flour, you put it on your shelf, you're not going to have any mold growth, right? Wow. But if you buy organic flour, there's no bleach in the organic flour. You have to keep it in your refrigerator to prevent mold,
Right.
So there's just ways of doing things that have been done for years and years and years. And it's convenient because you can ship your products, and they can stay on the shelf. And there's they're not looking at the long-term effects of chronic exposures to these substances over time.
So can you explain because many in the audience may not understand, what is the difference between inorganic mercury, organic mercury? What does that terminology mean exactly?
Right. Well, all it means is that with organic mercury, there's a methyl group attached to the mercury element. A methyl group is a carbon hydrogen compound. And made up of carbon and hydrogen. So when that group attaches to the inorganic mercury, then you have an organic mercury. And so mercury changes form. It's called demethylation, so that group can come off the mercury, and then you're left with the inorganic mercury, and that happens in our body. So you can be exposed to methyl mercury, and it'll be converted in your gut to mercury, inorganic mercury. And if you have leaky gut, or say you consume a lot of high fructose corn syrup, and at one point Americans were consuming up to 60 pounds per year of this stuff per individual. Right now they're saying it's less, probably 30 pounds per year. Consider that 3 pounds per year of broccoli. That's a huge amount of bad stuff to be ingesting in your gut. So, but they've already shown that high consumption of high fructose corn syrup leads to leaky gut. I mean, that's just a fact. And then, so when your gut starts leaking, then you're going to get that inorganic mercury and everything else going straight to your bloodstream. And then it's going to be carried. In fact, we found a relationship between inorganic mercury in your blood and your fasting glucose. So the more inorganic have, the higher your inorganic blood mercury's level be, and slow your glucose. So there's a direct connection between this inorganic mercury and diabetes. If you're going to say that elevated glucose is a risk factor for diabetes, which it is, right? So, you know, that's why I say there's more than one factor. I mean, there's so many factors that play into the development of any disease. It does, you know, whatever disease you're talking about. So many pathways, and we, you know, it's complicated, and we can't talk about it
but
to the public.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, as a physician, so I do lifestyle medicine as well as family medicine. I can move people to a healthy, whole foods, plant-based diet. We'll have reversal of disease.
Absolutely.
So
There's
the
no
food
doubt.
is the food, it's the food. So
Yeah.
regardless if they've attached, if we look at these food compounds, when we can get into also the pesticides and everything else that you spoke about in your book. So that's a whole nother
Then you have another hit in epigenetics, which I've published in that area. And, you know, that article is being cited all over the world. It was a clinical epigenetics article that explained why we have autism. And in fact, recently we published an article in Scientific American saying why autism hits boys more than girls. And there's reasons for all of this, and people are studying them, and they're becoming more understandable. But the hits, we're talking about epigenetic hits. When you have a lot of exposures to different things, these are called hits on your, and it impacts the way your genes behave. And as soon as your genes are not allowing the production of certain proteins, say you're having the protein you need to excrete heavy metals isn't working right because your diet isn't providing enough zinc, or, you know, you have too much mercury exposure, or, you know, whatever, then that's going to lead to the accumulation of the heavy metal. Or then with the pesticides, there's a gene that's involved in that must be turned on to be able to produce an enzyme that you have to be able to break down the most common organophosphate pesticides. And we know that our diet impacts that gene. So, you know, if that gene isn't working right, then you're not going to be able to excrete the pesticides. So, I mean, this is like another hit on your system. So it's all interrelated. You can't just stop one thing. You can't just stop drinking soda and then you're going to be better. No, you have to change and have a whole foods diet. You've got to have lots of water, organic food. There's just one path as far as, you know, achieving for as long as possible, because we're all going to break down eventually. You know,
right, absolutely.
We're born to die. We're all going to die of something.
Right.
But in terms to have the longest, healthiest lifespan, then there's only really one path.
Yeah, and we can accelerate the breakdown, right? So
yes, of course.
I'm sure there's telomeres, but just to explain to everyone what epigenetics is, could you explain how the environment of the genes, even as you were in the womb of your mother's womb, how that can affect your long-term health? Can you explain what that means? And then explain how the genes actually encode all these proteins. And people go, it's funny how people are so focused on, it's a very reductionist type of view, right? We look at one little tiny thing at a time and thinking, oh, that's the cause of this and that's the cause of that. But we can't. We need to take a whole approach, right?
Yeah,
the entire orchestra of what's going on in someone's life, right, and the environmental bit. Can you explain to them what epigenetics means exactly?
Okay. Epigenetics is how genes turn on and off. That's it in a nutshell. And so these methyl groups, they can turn genes on or they can turn genes off. And methyl groups, actually, you can get methyl groups from the diet. There's certain foods that are high in methyl groups. You got to have enough methyl groups. And all the chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, they're associated with demethylation and undermethylation, not having enough methyl groups. Okay. And so that we don't know a lot. I mean, we don't really know. It's a new field. Epigenetics just came into being after they found out the human genome back in 2000. Around there is when Craig Ventnor broke the code. then after that, when they figured out, oh, we can see what the genes are, but this still doesn't answer why we have disease. So then they started looking beyond that, and they found that, well, genes have to turn on and off, and if our environment is impacting this process, then we're not going to have the proteins. You have oncogenes, genes that cause cancer, right? So that's not a gene you want to have turned on. Okay, so that gene is going to turn on if your diet is not good, and or if you're exposed to compounds in the environment that are carcinogenic, as in causing cancer. So it's kind of complicated, but that's what it comes down to in layman's terms.
So even the foods also too, for example, what I ate with my 3 kids impacted their long-term health, because they were born with genes turned on, gene turned off,
Right.
Setting them up for,
Right.
or maybe
Metabolism.
early, right.
Metabolism, you inherit when your mother is, whatever her diet is when you're in the womb, then this metabolism that that's happening is going to pass on to the child. And like we already know that if a child is born from 2 parents with diabetes, that child will be born with insulin resistance. Okay, so you're passing on your metabolism already, and that is just crucial. And it's crucial that we have health education in K through 12. That should be a priority. That should be as important as reading. You can integrate health education with reading and even math. And if we don't have health education, we don't even have culinary. We don't have cooking anymore in high schools. Very few schools have cooking. So the health education is focused on not doing drugs and not smoking and this and that, but they don't really do anything on nutrition. Very little is done on nutrition, and that's what we need to be doing is nutrition and exercise, and in addition to staying away from drugs and alcohol, because it's not just the drugs and the alcohol that impact birth outcomes, or the smoking or the cigarettes. It's the food that we're eating, and this is clear now through the studies of epigenetics. So if you can pass on your metabolism, or then you're setting your child up for obesity before they're even born, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I remember, because it's family medicine, so I see from newborn through, I think my oldest patient I've ever had is 106. So what was interesting is I had a 6-month-old that was way outside the high upper limit of the growth scale, and not necessarily in height, but in weight. I mean, this kid was at 6 months, she was being breastfed, and hadn't even been introduced foods yet. And I was like, what is going on? And you look at the parents, what they're consuming, what mom ate when she was pregnant, those type of things, and really things started clicking. So that is it's a perfect real world example of the epigenetics. And the other thing we have to think about is people are like, well, I don't have kids, I'm not going to worry about. Oh yeah, you do. Who do you think is going to be paying your Social Security taxes and keeping this country running when you're old and decrepit and can't? So who's going to be our new lawyers and our new doctors and our new magistrates and our new everything? Who's going to take care of this as a society, and that we live together? So, and you mentioned talking about that in the world too, like who's going to be in our armed forces? Because now, we're both vets. We understand that we need healthy recruits.
Oh yeah. Well, they're having such trouble now with recruitment. I'm a member of Military Officers Association, and we get a magazine every month. And the bottom line is we cannot produce the numbers of Americans needed to serve these days. I mean, out of 10 high school students, 3 might be able to do the physical fitness and pass the ASVAB, which is the intelligence, the test where they determine if a person has the thinking skills, critical thinking and math and everything to do the jobs in the military. Military is high tech, and they need educated people to serve. And they're now taking people from Bangladesh they've always taken people from the Philippines to serve,
Mm-hmm.
and then that gives them an avenue for,
Citizenship.
for getting American citizenship. But
Yeah.
they're recruiting now from Bangladesh. That's what I understand.
Wow.
I mean, and from other countries, because we can't produce people that can pass the ASVAB. 3 out of 10 high school students might be eligible, and of those 3, one or two might go to college.
Right.
And they're not going to do the military.
Right.
So we're in terrible straits.
And the people don't understand that. They don't, well, if it doesn't affect me directly right now, let's not think about the long-term consequences. But on a side note, my husband is Filipino. His dad came through the Navy, and that's how they developed citizenship. And then my husband was born here. So
that's right.
But it is a fascinating thing to think about. We have to think outside of just our own individual lives and what, can I get this or can I do that? What's going outside our communities in our country? And I'm sure there's many things to this, but there's political issues and upheavals, and people are always at each other. It's outside of that. Everyone has to eat. Everyone wants to be healthy. Everyone wants everybody's children to be healthy, not have to deal with chronic disease. We want to lower our chronic disease burden, the cost of it, the economic cost, the emotional cost, the physical cost. I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. That is a commonality that we should all be able to agree on, is that our children should be fed healthy food. Healthy food should be available at a reasonable cost without having to worry about pesticides. But that is the other thing. So can we dive a little bit into the pesticides? Have you done much as far as the industry, as far as Monsanto and Roundup and different things like that? What is your take on the industry and their power for us to prevent it? What should we do?
Well, the problem here is beyond just pesticides. The problem is who owns the corporations. And now we have pharmaceutical companies. They're not only producing medicines, but they're producing pesticides. So I guess it's almost a monopoly here. I mean, when you're in a business and say you produce a product, then it's to your benefit to try to own the supply chain. So all the materials that you need to produce your product, if you can own those materials, own the production of those, then you're going to reduce the cost of doing business, because you're not going to have to pay. You gain profit from owning that supply chain. And so the whole focus of our way of doing business is on the bottom line. You've got people who want to make money, and profit is the number one motivation. So you now have pharmaceutical married to chemical. I think Bayer
just bought Monsanto.
Yeah. So now we have that dynamic, and so really it's to their benefit if people get sick from eating all of the conventionally grown food with pesticides.
Right.
It's their benefit, because then they can treat them with their pharma chemicals.
Right.
We're in the supply chain now.
Right.
I mean, clean up. And if we're sick, then to their benefit, it increases their profit, and that's exactly what's happened. So the only changes we can make, they used to say, well, you can vote. Well, yeah, you can vote, but nowadays with the voting situation and the corporations, and that they can put as much money, they can buy candidates, basically.
Oh yeah, I went to Washington.
Isn't the answer.
No, and I went to Washington D.C. last year with a group of physicians, because we were concerned about a physician's voice in the government, and how we were concerned about how physician education was proceeding, and the care and the healthcare of human the medicine in general. Right. But anyway, when we went and we met with a few of the congressmen, one of them basically said, if you'd spend the money that you spend on your airline ticket to see us, then we actually might listen. So basically, we vote you into office and I have to pay for you to listen to me. That is, I don't usually say words, but boy, there were words I wanted to say that day. And so I was like, well, how dare you? How dare you? Yeah, but for me, it's just, I guess I'm idealistic and I'm always optimistic, but how dare you speak to someone like that who served this country, and we voted to put you in there. You're here to serve us, and yet we have to pay you more than your salary. That's unbelievable. So really disheartened. So what I like to do now is share this message, but it's like, we actually have the power. We really do. It's in our pockets. The
We
money
can
that we
vote with
make.
our dollar. Our dollar is the vote.
Yes, it
So
is.
you choose to buy organic food. You choose to grow your own food. If you're growing your own food, then, I mean, summer gardens, you can stuff like in the olden days. Doing all of that means that's the less food you're going to buy at the store.
Mm-hmm.
And stores are already getting the message that consumers want better quality food. And I remember when Whole Foods first came out. I was working for the government in the DC area, and Whole Foods, yay. And there's only a few stores, but they became popular, and there's now, of course, Amazon owns them. But the bottom line is there was a need, and people were recognizing they wanted better quality food. But what happened was when Whole Foods started getting a share of the market, then Safeway started their own brand, organic.
Mm-hmm.
So they tell us, everybody's telling us we're buying organic. And I have to wonder, it'd be nice if there was somebody who had the funding to go out and actually analyze some of these organic products and say, hey, are there pesticide residues? Because we don't really have any watchdogs out there. Truly, we don't. And my organization is totally volunteer. We have absolutely no funding, and the only funding we ever got was from the Environmental Protection Agency, and it didn't come to us. It went to a tribal college, and they had us on as an adjunct, professor to carry out the grant, and do the clinical trials. So the bottom line is, you look at what people are doing with the funding that you do give. I mean, when you give to organizations, what are they doing? What are they telling the truth, or are they glossing over or kind of doing, around the edges, but are they actually fighting for you? And there aren't too many organizations, some of these, on both sides of the aisle. I mean, what are they actually doing for this citizen to educate them and to tell them the truth? Not too many are doing the truth.
Right.
So what I am doing in my personal life is, I'm gardening and buying organic, local. If it's local, you have a better chance of, getting better quality because it doesn't have to travel far. So that there's, if you can develop cooperatives, farming cooperatives, where you maybe, and you don't want to do monocropping because that's a big problem. Just having one crop, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work with our pollinators, the bees and the butterflies. They need diversity in their diet. They need a variety of plants. Mm-hmm. So, just like we need a variety of nutrients, they need a variety of nutrients. So if you're doing monocropping, then you're not providing the pollinators with what they need. So it's stupid to be from bees to almonds or this or that or blueberries, monocrops, because, it's like it's not a sustainable system.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing with the decline in the bee. So I think, it's really up to us to have our gardens in the summer and to can, and because we can't rely on corporations that are invested. They're now invested. They own our food supply if we let them. The only way we can survive at this point and have good health is to have our own gardens, or have co-ops in our local community where we're sharing. Maybe you grow 6 different things, somebody else grows other things. That's the only way to do it because our system has been so corrupted. They worship money.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
worship money.
Yeah, it's highly disturbing, and we don't think about it until someone brings that we're so busy and inundated with so many other things. And that's the other thing too, right? Because people become ill, right? So now we're getting chronic disease at such an earlier age.
Oh my God, yeah, children.
Type 2 diabetes was typically adult onset, and before the age of 10 is not unheard of at this point. Unfortunately, that leads them to a shortened lifespan, but also a life full of medications and disease. And so they're so focused on themselves and their disease process and where that's leading and what they can do. Nobody brings about the whole idea of disease reversal, which I can talk about, but also prevention in the sense of for parents. But the other thing I just wanted to mention to you is that I'm the managing editor for a new medical journal that we're launching. It might be of interest to you. that it's coming from Dr. Scott Stoll and Dan Purges from the Purges Foundation. Dr. Scott Stoll started the Plantrition Project, and it's the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention. So our goal is to bring about, for plant-based research, but other things too. Also, as far as our food, they're working with the Rodale Institute, organic farming, and all this. So if offline you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to put you in touch with some folks. But it's a really incredible opportunity to publish these type of things, but also we want to create a journal or a digest for the general public, so we can have people speak about and translate science, it's into the layman terms. You don't have to have a PhD like you do to understand the science. And honestly, physicians are not well versed in looking at research and being able to determine, is this a good quality study? Is this a study that warrants, clinical application? Or where does it do? I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, people don't even look at the conflict of interest and see, should I even trust this man?
Did you learn from my book?
I did. Actually, we just barely scratched the surface of your book. I mean, it's very technical, and you go into deep detail, which makes it very easy for people to understand. You did a really nice job. But then you also give solutions, right? And that's also on your website about dietary interventions, what you should be consuming, and which is what we're all, in this type of movement in lifestyle medicine or really, really focused on, is the food and, of course, exercise and stress and all that. But it all comes together, right? Because if you're well, if you feed your body well, you're less stressed, you sleep better, you have more time, you have more energy, you have more resources. No, this is a very good.
And you can deal with the stresses when they do come without getting sick.
Right.
And the book does come with a free online healthy diet tutorial and we also have a tutorial for teens that takes 3 chapters out of the book they must know. And then there's reading guides so that, to help them make sure they get the take-home message for each chapter. And of course, every module of instruction has a video or, kitchen exercise, cooking, or whatever. So it's meant to help people, to bring them through a learning process, so that by the time they're done with the 8 weeks for adults, 4 weeks for teens, then they really do have a clue as to what they can do.
And that's the nice part, is you break it down, right? So you break it down into the elements, so it's not so overwhelming. Because when people say eat healthy, you're like, what do I do? I thought I was eating healthy. What does that mean? What do I do? How do I cook this way? And it's not really much of a veer. I mean, you're still using the same cooking skills. You're just changing ingredients a little bit.
Yeah, you're changing the way you've been taught to do it. Right. The reason why the education that I've set up, it's been tested in 3 clinical trials involving humans and different populations, like parents of learning disabled, indigenous people who are at high risk of diabetes. And the reason why this works, and I'll tell you the secret, because since I retired, I've been teaching school, elementary through high school, different subjects, but I'm licensed in special education and science. And so I have taught literally elementary, middle school, high school, and community college. And I understand how people learn. So basically, in special ed terms, the way I designed the curriculum is I chunk it, which means you give them little pieces. And then they build off of that. And so you have to, chunk it, and so that people get little pieces until it kind of all take form. And that's why why the education has worked in 3 clinical trials to help. Every single group that we used, they significantly decreased their consumption of processed foods and significantly increased their consumption of whole and or organic foods. So I mean, it's just a matter of learning what is safe and what is not safe.
But then it goes to also, right? So we learn it, so we have knowledge, and then we know the skills, but it's also community. So we need others, we need accessibility, we need others in our community with the same belief systems working with each other to help support each other, because it's easy to make a change for a couple of weeks. It's easy to fall back into old habits because these convenience foods are here. And honestly, I found that the healthier eating is actually cheaper. The other thing is with Whole Foods, with being bought out by Amazon, So they have Amazon Fresh now. It's actually not that expensive to buy the organic and have it delivered. No. So for me,
it's
I was
never
like,
been cheaper. It's
oh
organic has never been cheaper.
I mean, this is incredible for me. So, and then do you ever work with the Environmental Working Group or EWG?
No, I haven't, because first of all, these groups that have a lot of money, they are none of them have actually done any reaching out to me, and I think I'm viewed as a threat because I do go with the truth, and none of them have worked at the FDA. First of all, these are people that worked on the periphery, so they don't have. They're trying to earn a living in their nonprofits, and the money goes to paying salaries, and they go out and they're talking heads basically, and they might do they have their dirty dozen list or whatever that they come out with, but you know what, that's so minute a piece. That's such a minute a piece because they're not looking at it holistically. They're not offering consumers the whole enchilada, if you will.
Right.
And you have to take the holistic approach, and you can't just do one thing. So if you stop buying celery or this or that because it's on the EWG's list of no-nos,
right,
then that's only that's not going to save you.
Right.
So
right.
They do things and they're just like both sides of the aisle. I mean, some of these nonprofits at both sides of the aisle, they don't want to tick off the powers that be, because they have to get funding to run their operations. And so, I mean, I've seen nonprofits in the industry getting money from the big food companies, Nestle.
Wow.
I mean, these big companies underwrite every nutrition program at every university in our country, and so these people that run the nonprofits, they come from universities, and they're kind of indoctrinated. They go through programs that the big ag and big food are basically paying for their internships and this and that. That's what I see. So the experience of having worked at FDA, of having done environmental cleanup work and toxicology and understanding toxic substance exposure, that's a different framework. It's a different paradigm. And you look at the holistic approach, you come out of it with a holistic approach.
Right.
And so we have our whatever funding we get is from individual donors, and we don't have any relationships with
big
big
corporations.
Yeah. So that means that you don't get a lot of support. Your message is not heard. Right. And you write a book and it can have 10 different reviews that are excellent, 5-star. But unless there are people willing to carry that message, it's not going to get out. I mean,
right.
I think my book has sold like 1,500 copies. It's been out a year and a half, which is not very many.
Well, that's why I think if we can double that for you at least, is you guys check it out. I don't know if you can see it, but Unsafe at Any Meal, and I'll of course put a link to where you sell it and everything in the show notes. But I mean, this is a really good message, and you you talk about everything. You have pictures of nutrition labels, and you talk about the medications and the maternal aspects, and I mean, it's just on and on. And I was like, it's kind of depressing, but it's the truth.
Yeah, it's the truth.
But we need to know, because that really is, we're seeing a huge rise of autism in kids, and people go, oh, it's because we're diagnosing it more, but really, these are children who don't function. I'm pretty sure as physicians, we'd have noticed that prior to, I mean, it's not that we're better at diagnosticians. I know there's more of them.
Yeah, and, it's happening. We're seeing it. There's no doubt about it. And it's not gloom and doom. Sometimes the truth hurts.
Yeah.
You set off a nuclear bomb, and then people are going to get killed initially, and then those that are left are going to have radiation poisoning, and then difficulty conceiving or having deformed children. These are facts.
Yeah.
Yep. So I deal in facts and hard facts. And facts are considered hard facts.
And there is a truth, and I think that's the other thing with our society. We want, well, my truth is relative to what I want to see or what I want to do, you know. And it's like, no, actually, the truth affects all of you. I'm like, go jump off the 6-story building. I'm pretty sure gravity laws are going to be that you're going to land and die. I mean, so these are things that you need to face. And just like if you neglect your children, you're going to grow up with probably juvenile delinquents. I mean, it's a garden you have to tend. Growing children, there's many things your truth may be, I want to be paid to stay at home and do nothing. Well, that's just not going to happen.
And guess what? Work is hard.
Work is hard. Yes,
work
it is.
is hard. So facts are hard and work is hard. And and guess what? You're going to die. Everybody's going to die, and that sucks, but it's true, you know. So if you can get beyond that and just like
right, exactly. We're not going to avoid taxes and death, right? That's what they always said. Those are the things we can rely on. The thing is, what type of life do you want to live? And that little hyphen on your tombstone, the year you were born, the year you leave this world, there's a world in this experiences and interactions with others. And do you want to be the one, the sick parent who's dealing with diabetes and overweight and has to, I knew someone who was, sit on a chair in the backyard and throw his football at his kid because he couldn't get up because he weighed 500 pounds, but then he changed diet and loses all this weight and then he's active with your children. So, I mean, those are just minor stories, but we choose by what we put in our mouth. We choose with our dollars, how in our environment, and we can get into the environment and all that stuff. Oh my goodness, but that could go on. But yes, you're right. I love it. Truth is hard. Gary, you're right. I am still going to think I need to name this podcast. Truth is hard.
It is hard. And it sucks, folks. But you know what? Anybody can do it. I have a friend. She was in the public health service 30 years, and a beautiful woman in her 70s now. And her significant other were into taking supplements. And I said, don't take the supplements because they're the biggest cause of liver disease. That's been established. That is a fact. And, like I said, in pharmacopoeia supplements, they're all using the same chemicals.
Right.
And I kept telling them for years, And then finally she was diagnosed with liver disease. And they said, her enzymes are really elevated. They said, it looks like you might need a liver transplant. So she finally started listening. God bless her. And she started reading everything. She's very intelligent. We're talking, she's extremely intelligent. She started reading everything. And now she finally listened to everything I said. She's listened. She's changed her diet. And now her liver enzymes are normal. Boom. She doesn't need a liver transplant. So, I had a doctor who was in one of my presentations in Washington, D.C., and he said, did you know that supplements cause liver disease? And at that time, I didn't know. And I said, no, I didn't. But he said, yeah, I was taking a lot of supplements. He was a physician. And he said he was diagnosed with liver disease. And then he was told by the expert that he went to that, the leading cause of liver disease is supplements. So that's another thing, that why the truth is so is not being listened to is because you have these competing manufacturers. If they're not selling you pharmaceuticals on the one end and conventional food, and then let's go organic, and here, have some supplements. You go to any organic food store and they're throwing all these supplements at you and trying to sell you on the idea of, hey, you don't have time to fix a salad, or have healthy food, take one of these supplements, easy peasy.
Right.
Guess what?
But that's the reductionist cited things, right? It's people want their pills, they want it fast, and it's reducing things. So people say, I need a protein. I'm sorry, but foods are not proteins. They're whole food. They have many things. It's not just a protein.
Yeah. Right.
I hate people when they talk like that. I need to add more protein. No, you don't. I've never seen a protein deficient American unless you're an anorexic or in a burn unit and it's seeping out of you. Stop. So,
just some more methyl groups.
Right. Oh, well, speak to us. Where do we get the methyl groups? What foods?
Well, some of these very green, charred, the things are telling you that you need eggs. Eggs actually have methyl groups. I have a chart in my book
Oh, yes.
provides all the methyl groups. I'd have to look at it
Yes.
to tell you, but
I'd have to look at the...
if you have a varied diet of lots of different things,
Right.
then you'll get enough methyl groups. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I'm
here we
not
go,
one
31.
that subscribes just to, like one kind of eating. The only kind of eating I'm opposed to is a processed food diet, but the rest of it, I'm not out there waving the vegetarian flag. I'm just...
Yeah, I am. And there's reasons, for obvious reasons, and there's the science behind that, and
I
journeys. So, but yeah, as you would know for sure. But yeah, it's on page, let's see, 90 for the list of the methyl groups. But these are all things like broccoli and, your greens, your peppers, spinach, those dark green leafies help in so many ways. Your nitrates, your nitric oxide formation, all that stuff. So lots of good stuff here. But the key thing here is people understanding too, as well as the processed foods, how they manufacture foods, the money, where it's coming from, why we need to grow our own foods, support local farmers, all these type of things. So
right. And here's one last thing. So vegetarians get sick too.
Oh yeah, they do.
And the reason why is because they have processed foods aimed at vegetarians. So, the real evil thing here are the highly processed foods.
Right,
whether
absolutely.
Vegetarian or not, which
right.
I'm not against, eating plant-based. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Either way, bottom line is you got to cut those processed foods out of your diet.
Yeah, that's definitely the processed foods. Yeah, I tell people you can be, and I never really use the word vegan or vegetarian. It's more of a whole foods plant-based diet is the way I describe it. Yeah. But you can eat, Oreos and drink Dr. Pepper and be a vegan. Doesn't mean you're healthy. So yeah. So that, that people go, well, yeah, or they'll say, but I've seen vegans who are fat. I'm like, yeah, there are fat vegans because they have food addictions just like everyone else. They just don't eat meat or dairy, but they're still eating their junk food.
Yeah.
So there's so much to it.
And it can be addictive. Junk food, sugar, it's addictive. Or maybe you're not addicted to sugar, but you're addicted to salt or, the crunchy nature. You've got to substitute whatever it is if you need the fizz and the bubble, then go for carbonated water and orange juice, mix it up, make yourself a soda, or, there's ways to substitute for everything, whatever it is you need. The palate needs certain things, and you can substitute a healthy
alternatives. Absolutely. And I think people forget, they're like, well, nothing will taste the same. I'd rather die than not have this. I'm like, well, what kind of death are you looking for? A death that's drawn out over 20 years of chronic illness, drooling on yourself from your stroke in the nursing home? Right. Or would you rather eat a little healthier and then actually live a life full of vitality and thriving?
It's so true. It's hard. It's hard, but true.
I know it's hard, but the thing is we get older, right? So as I get closer to 50, my kids are all grown up and I'm like, I can't afford, I want to be around a long time for grandkids, Lord willing, that, and see these wonderful things happen to my children and be part of life and active. And so far I've been blessed with good health. And of course things happen. Like you said, we're all going to die. It's a hard fact. It's a hard truth. But like I said, Dr. Kim Williams, who's our editor-in-chief, he said, he was the past president of the American College of Cardiology. And he said, I don't mind dying. I just don't want it to be my fault.
I like that.
That's
great.
I love it too. I was like, I love that so much. I was like, I'm going to make that my motto as well. But I'll always give credit to Dr. Williams. But absolutely. The most valuable thing we can do is feed ourselves well.
Absolutely.
So, but Dr. Dufault, is there anything else we should say before we go? I know I've kept you the hour that I promised, but.
I would just say to the listener and the viewer that it's truly up to you. Yeah, because you can only control your own behavior. Yeah,
you're
and if
absolutely
you have children, I urge you to take good care of those kids because they're our future leaders. And please make sure that they're going to have a chance at being healthy.
And that's the one thing. Parents are afraid to parent in many aspects, either be it discipline, love, time. They get so stressed out. But parents, it can be done. And I'm always willing and able to help anyone who has questions about parenting and raising healthy kids. And I've done it 3 times. Maybe I'm just lucky, but I think we did something right. And I had some amazing mentors in that field. So again, people, we'll put your website, and you have the free course, the 8-week course on how to eat healthy, and it's for teens as well. And maybe some teacher will take this up and bring it into their school.
I hope so.
And maybe someone in their church groups or small groups somewhere, exactly, and spread that word, because that's how this movement will continue to grow. And it is growing.
Yeah, Margaret Mead said it would take, I forget the saying, but it's a great saying. It just takes one. Never underestimate the
power of one.
The power of the one. And so, you could have a book study group where you're, doing a book with a nutrition program. If there are other books out there that have a nutrition program, great. And it's good and leads them to health, go for it. We got one here, it's free, do it. Bottom line is, take the initiative to change your life.
Right. And I would hope someone too with even more media presence would, hey, you're exactly right. Let's take it chapter by chapter, or like you said, a book club. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. Chapter by chapter, and then learn from that, discuss it, how you can implement changes in your own life, or do the 8-week course together. Right. So I think there's some fabulous tools here to help people change. You don't have to do it alone. Create your own Facebook groups. Right. Do whatever. Reach out to Dr. Dufault.
Dufault. Every module of instruction that's on our healthy diet tutorial has discussion questions. So in addition to the kitchen cupboard activities, the videos, the actual assignments to help you understand everything, you've got the discussion questions. So it's designed for a book study group. Right. It's designed so you could have a little group, like there's AA for people that need to learn how to live one day at a time. Well, guess what? We could have, maybe I should rename my book for, instead of Unsafe at Any Meal, The Healthy Path or something.
Or you could have a supplement to it, right? And so, this is where social media comes in. There's almost, 2 billion people or something like that, or close to it, on Facebook alone. So that's where social media presence, and that's where I found that I'm really comfortable is I like the videos and interviewing people, but I'm still a doctor. I still want to help people, but I can reach more people this avenue than anyone just in my own self-awareness, or just, so I'm doing my, hopefully my part to help you grow, and I'll do everything I can to share your word. And so thank you so much for your time. I know we had several scheduling conflicts. I had a kid that broke a leg. That's better. Who's healing. Oh, this is kind of interesting. So this child is 19. Well, it's a young man now. I apologize, Gabriel. But he hit a tree, snowboarding, double black diamond. He broke the tibia and fibula February 13th. He had 2 plates and 22 screws, just obliterated his fibula. And so I flew there over in literally in the middle of the night and got there. He's had within day 9. Now this kid eats healthy. I make sure it's organic. He's been preached healthy eating for a long time. And what's been incredible, he's 19, but his healing was so quickly progressing, and his pain and inflammation, he had 0 pain day 9 post-op of that type of injury. Wow. His orthopedic is, I can't believe you don't have any pain. Then this PT said, wow, your skin is healing really well. And he still has no pain. He's bearing weight now. We're just 7 weeks out, 8 weeks out. And it's just incredible. They're just the power of the food and healing. Granted, I understand he's young, but I have also seen young people not heal well because what they're consuming.
That's a benefit right there. Benefit.
Yep. So
where's he, in Alaska?
He's in Colorado.
Oh, Colorado.
Yeah, he's a University of Colorado student in Boulder. So, but yeah, that is, so people take this lesson, it's our mood, it's our gut bacteria, it's cancer genes and epigenetics. Is so much. There's a diet we're meant for, and it wasn't man-made processed foods. We can agree on that for sure. Or pesticides. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Dufault, for spending your morning with us.
Yeah, I'm going to send you a hug, okay?
I will. And a high five for sure. At least we can do that. People can say,
aloha.
Oh, aloha. Thank you.